Hey everyone, someone had emailed me asking if I could explain how I would go about creating a hexagonal based subdivision surface object such as a hex nut or a hex screw, something you might see on a mechanical object. So I'm just going to quickly go over the method that I would use or that I use to create these shapes. So under the create menu I'm going to go to the disk tool and I'm going to drag that out while I hold the control key down because you want to constrain it so it's not flat or tall. So if you hold the control key down, it will make sure it's squared off. And also in the numeric panel, you want to make sure you're at 6 sides. So we start off with our initial hexagon polygon. I'm just going to raise that a little bit to get it off the axis lines. And I'm going to do a couple of versions of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select that initial polygon. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste a version into layer 2 and another copy of it into layer 3. So we can go back to that when we're done with this first one. So to go about doing this first one, I'm going to leave this object as a flat two-dimensional object right now, and we'll do the bulk of the work that way, and then we'll just extrude it, and that will save us a little time doing it that way. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the knife tool. So if you go into the multiply tab, subdivide area, and if you select the knife tool, I'm going to hold the control key down to get a horizontal cut, and I'm going to drag that so it's kind of close to the edge but not too close. That looks about good. And then I'm just going to use the right click and hold, right click drag to create a similar cut on the top. I'm going to accept that. I'm just going to go maximize that view so we can enlarge this so we can see what's going on a little bit better. I'm going to go back to the knife tool, which I have in my control shift menus, and then we're going to do 4 more cuts for the other sides. Now these cuts, because you can't constrain it to this angle, what I usually do is I'll actually drag out the knife tool so it actually goes right on top of this edge. Maybe goes over it a little bit. And then when I do that, I know that this cut will be parallel to that edge, which is what I'm aiming for. And then I'll just use my left mouse button and drag it out. So it's about the same distance as the first cut was, or the first 2 cuts were. And then after that one is in the place where I want it, I'm just going to use the right mouse button to click and hold and drag it so I have a cut on the opposite side. I'm going to accept that and then go back to the knife tool and do the same thing for these last 2 sides. So that's about good. I'm going to drag this out and then right mouse button to get that last cut in there. So essentially what we've done right now is we have our hex shape with the beginning of our control on cuts on each of these sides. So at this point what we could do is, if you want to get rid of this large n-gon, you could just select that n-gon. Again, go to the subdivide menu and you want to select make pole, and that will turn that n-gon into all tris. Usually I like to go for all quads, but in this case it'll actually kind of hold the shape a little bit better. If you wanted to turn this into quads instead, it's pretty simple to do. You could just select 2 opposite polygons, or two connected polygons right there, and hit Control Z. Oops, sorry, hit Shift Z. Let's go back where we were. Select those polygons and hit Shift Z to merge those 2. So if you want to end it up with all quads over there, you could do it that way. I have a tendency to like the way this subdivides better when you leave the tris on this hexagon n-gon. I feel like it holds the shape better on all these corners. But that is totally up to you, however you want to handle that. Next we're just going to extrude the shape. So again, if you go to the multiply tab and then go to extrude on the left, you could drag that down a little bit, and the last thing we're just going to do is select 2 polygons along this bottom edge. You go to go to Bandsaw Pro, and those loop cuts looked about good. And if we hit the tab key now, you can see you have your initial hexagon shape that you started with, but it's all subdivided with nice rounded corners. So, like I said before, if we go back to layer 2, where we have our initial polygon, sometimes you may want possibly a circle cutout. If this is like a hex nut, for instance, you may want a hexagon shape on the outside, but you may want a round shape, or a cylinder cutout through the middle. So you kind of have to approach that a little bit differently than we did in the first case. So in this case, I'm just going to select that polygon. I'm going to use the bevel tool, so hit the B key. I'm just going to drag that in to about the size that we're going to want this this circular cutout to be, and that looks good right there. And then I'm going to go back to our 4-view setup. We could delete that polygon right there, and if you hit the tab key right now, you could see that this 6-sided interior object or interior shape and exterior shape, basically they're turning into a circle, which is fine, except we still want to keep the shape of the hexagon on the outside, just not the inside. So what we could do in this case is we could go back and start adding our control loops or our control edges to the outside like we did in the beginning, but the difference being this time we have these edges that are kind of radial edges that are going out from the inside cutout to the outside. So that will change things a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the knife tool, and I'm going to add some of these control edges to each of the sides, but I'm going to use pretty much the same method as I did before, where I line the initial cut on the edge to make sure it's parallel. If you could, when you're making this cut, if you look right up in this area on the top right, I'm going to try to make sure that that cut goes through this intersection, and that will try to make it as clean as possible. We're going to be doing some welding when we're done with this also, and we go to our next cut. If you look, we're going to try to again align this cut into this intersection. So if you're off a little bit, it's not really that critical, because we'll be cleaning up those new cuts in a second. So I'm just going to align this last edge, and then do our last cut through these 2 intersections. Okay, so now we have the beginning of the control edges along this the outside of the object. The only thing we'll need to do is we'll definitely need to clean up some of these cuts. If you go to your point selection mode and you just lasso around those edges, you can see that we have 3 points if you look in the bottom left. So we definitely want to get rid of that. So I'm just going to use weld. So basically I did right click to select all those points there, and I'm just going to weld those points. So we only have 1 point there now, and do the same thing here. Again, you can see we have 3. I'm going to do a weld, select those. This one was off a little bit more, you can see. Do a weld on there. I'm going to go ahead and do that for the remaining corners. Okay, so we're almost done at that point. The last thing that we want to do at this stage is, you could see at each of these corners we have 2 small tries that are connecting, and this is one case where I would want to select those tries and merge those together to get a quad. So again, just do a shift Z. So I'm going to select those 2, shift Z to merge them, and I'm going to do that for the remaining corners. Okay, so we should be pretty good. If you look in the point statistics menu, you can see it looks like we have one. They there on the 6, and that should be okay, and then we have all the rest of them at 2 points, so we're good there. And I'm just checking in the polygon statistics, and it looks like we do have 6 1-point polys after that, after we did those weld operations. So again, I'm in the polygon mode. If you go to the polygon statistics, you can see where it's listed as 1 vertex, and there are 6. If you click on the little plus sign, it's essentially selecting those 1-point polys, and you could hit the delete key, and we'll get rid of those. Those would have caused some errors when you start subdividing the model. So it's better just to kind of delete them now. So we have this. The only other thing we'd want to do is add one more control loop to the inside of this. So you could select 2 polygons, go to Bandsaw Pro. I'm just going to clear that out and drag this down. So we have our control loop on the inside edge as well. And you can deselect everything. So the biggest difference you could see between the outside and the inside is on the outside we end up with essentially 3 points, which will become edges as we extrude this. And on the inside we only have the 1. So when we hit the tab key to subdivide this, you can see these corners on the outside are being constrained and keeping the hexagonal shape. The inside doesn't have those, so we just essentially end up with a 6-sided spherical or round shape. So if we go back to our 4-view setup, I'm just going to extrude this shape down a little bit, and then I'm going to select 2 polygons on the outside, go back to Bandsaw Pro, and I'm going to move that edge up a little bit and hit the mirror key so we get one on the top and bottom, and just do the same thing on those inside edges. So select 2 polygons, go to Bandsaw Pro, the last setting will be there, you accept it, and now if we hit the tab key, you can easily see how you end up with a this really looks like a a hex nut, a hexagonal shape on the outside but a perfectly round shape on the inside, and it's still fairly low poly. We're at 120, and in this case we definitely are at all quads. The only other version that I want to kind of quickly show is what if you wanted a hexagonal shape on the inside as well. So it'd be very, very similar to the other cases, but there'd be one little difference in the sense that we want to keep those control loops and the control edges on the inside as well as the outside. So I'm just going to select the polygon, hit the bevel tool, the B key, to create the bevel tool, and we're going to drag this in to give us the size of the shape of that. This time will be a hex cutout. So in this case, like I said before, we're going to want the control loops on the inside as well as the outside. So we're going to do our cuts a little bit differently this time. We are going to use the knife tool again, but rather than do the edges, we're actually going to do these edges that radiate from the center point. So I'll use the same method where I will just align the cut right on top of the existing edge and then drag it off slightly. And we're going to want a cut on either side of all these edges. So we're going to do these first 2 cuts right here. You can select that, go back to the knife tool, and this horizontal one you can definitely hold the control key down to get a perfectly horizontal cut. And I'm just going to use the right mouse button to get our second one, and then knife tool one more time to align that cut, and just drag it off, and right mouse button to get our last cut there. So essentially we're setting up our control edges that will hold the hex shape on the inside and outside. Then the only thing we need to do in this case is we need to use Bandsaw Pro to create our control loops on the inside and outside. This will go pretty quickly because the shape is the same, on the front and back. So again, select two joining polygons, go to Bandsaw Pro. We could clear out this setting and just we're going to slide this edge down closer to the center, and then just hit the mirror button to get one on the front and back. And if you hit the tab key, you could see that we get our hex shape on the inside and outside. And again, just like previously, I'm just going to use the extrude tool to give the shape some thickness, and then I'm going to use Bandsaw Pro again to add a control loop on the top and bottom of the extrusion. So I'm just going to clear that out. Set up the first cut and then hit the mirror button. So if we hit the tab key, you can see in this case as well, this was the easy one to keep all quads. We're at 180 polys for this one, but it subdivides really nicely and keeps the shape of the hex on the inside and outside. So there's 3 quick examples of creating hexagonal shapes using subdivision surfaces. You got the first one with no hole in it, second one with a round hole, and the third one with our hex shape with the hex hole in there. So I hope people can find it useful. Also, if you do find these videos useful, you might be interested in my Introduction to Hard Surface Subdivision Modeling commercial series, which is for sale on my site. And in that series, I'm able to go into a lot more detail into a lot of the basic subjects of subdivision modeling. Thanks again.